Okay, it's live. We're live. We're live. Live.
One second, I'm just logging in, so.
I like sure.
Thanks. I can get more last. I was working in the yard, literally.
Before you leave tonight,
Yes,
I have a movie question for you. It was a bizarre one.
sure. I only know about 4 things in this world. That's one.
One of them, I know. Yeah.
Good evening, this is the Borough of Crafton Council meeting for October 14th, 2021. Call to order, flag salute with Mr. Amendola.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amendola here. Mr. Chandler here. Mr. Kraus here. Mr. Brown is absent. Mr. Lavasser here. Mr. Oliverio called and he's running late, but will be here. Ms. Perry
Here.
Mayor Bloom here. Solicitor Cornwall here. Engineer Minsterman here, and myself. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to move forward to the consent agenda. We have the approval of the minutes for September 23rd, 2021, and we have the bill list for October 14th, 2021.
So
On a second. Any questions or comments about these items? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? And that opposed? All right, moving forward to public comments on the agenda items. We have one member from the public here, and we have 2 members online. Do we have a sign-in sheet to see if anybody signed up to speak? No. All right. Anybody online would like to raise their hand and speak at this time about agenda items? All right. I'm going to move forward to the president's report. As everybody sees, we have an immense amount of construction. All that's gearing towards the sewer separations of our combined system. This week, members of council attended the Three Rivers Wet Weather Allegheny Sewer Authority and the Allegheny Health Department's meeting concerning the phase 2 consent order that the solicitor and the engineer are awaiting. That's going to be set before this council's desk, most likely this winter, and all the work that we've been doing is going to help us achieve those goals. I'm going to ask that we get permission from Alcosan to post the one fact sheet that I sent to council and to the mayor and to the rest of the professionals to add some detail and to provide some clarity to the public as to the importance of this capital campaign and what's going to be required of us moving forward. And Engineer Minsterman, who is a member of the Three Rivers Wet Weather Organization, has been instrumental in trying to ensure that these consent orders are fair to municipalities such as us. However, with that being said, we still have a lot of work ahead, and I really appreciate members of council attending that meeting. And I hope the members of the community that are running for office take it upon themselves to get up to speed and educated onto the challenges that face this community concerning this consent order. So with that, I'm going to move forward to the mayor's report.
I'll have some questions later on in the agenda, but I do have a question for you, Mr. Levasseur. I noticed that there is a sewer project going on the other side of the Oakwood Bridge. Is that part of this program, or is this a city going one?
That's the city.
Okay, but to say they're same size piping that they're digging down into Bell's Run from right at the other.
Are you talking about Woodlawn Promenade? Or?
No, the Oakwood Bridge.
Oh, yeah, then that's the city.
Okay, but I mean, there's no tie-in that, between the Crafton and the city on that project, or
No,
you weren't aware of that?
that's City of Pittsburgh, PWSA. Engineer Minsterman last week, a little more of that.
Yeah, all communities are out implementing projects, especially combined systems, because we grant money from Alpecin. So I would
So that
suspect
could
it's
be
just a project for that.
totally separate
Right,
project.
they have a separate sewer system. Rarely do our sewer systems mingle. Now they do in areas of where we're going to an interceptor, but not in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So not knowing exactly where that is definitely not on our list. As far as,
Don't have to be elementary school like towards Clearview. The Oakwood Bridge is right there.
oh, that's Oakwood, the one
Yeah,
that crosses.
Right,
Yeah.
right at the very end. In fact,
Yeah.
the equipment's on the bridge itself.
On the opposite side.
Right, and they're working, and I was just wondering if this was getting tied all together.
No, there's no connection there. I mean, maybe all the way down at the Chartiers Creek, there might be some point where the sewers join, but not at the Crafton.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mayor?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right. Engineer Minsterman, you have a lot to update us on, and appreciate all the work that Gateway's been doing. Everybody sees we started the Woodlawn Promenade. You could give some updates to all the projects and the path moving forward.
Yes, essentially, the project, the biggest project is the Crafton Boulevard Borough Grant project. All of the stormwater connections have been made. The system is operating, it's collecting stormwater, sending it to the tank, and managing that water. So the next step is to reconstruct all of the roads that the sanitary, or sorry, the combined sewer system piping and connections from the inlets. All of the reconstruction of those roads is now taking place. So they're going to start at the top and work street by street and come all the way back to the school. That's the plan. Woodlawn Fountain is underway as well. There was an extensive delay as a result of not being able to get piping, and that the contractor finally did acquire the necessary piping, and so the work has begun. So that project is moving well, and the same as Crafton Boulevard, happens to be the same contractor, by the way. Enterprise is doing both of those. Some progress on North Emily and Johnston as well. It looks like we finally sorted out all of the laterals, all of the homes and ancillary buildings that are connected to that sewer line that we're trying to abandon because of its condition and because of its location. It passes under several of the homes and garages. So We've identified the laterals, and now we're working toward getting an existing contractor, the contractor that is doing your sanitary sewer line repair work, to give us a price to relocate those laterals. And ultimately, those laterals will then be connected into the homes by a plumber of the homeowner's choice. And then that work would be reimbursed by Crafton. The idea there is just to stay out of a home, is to have their contractor do the work that they need. We would review the price of the work that they'd be doing. We'd be giving them specifications on how to make the connection. But it's between the property owner and the contractor is what they want specifically in their home. So you're just making this available. And I think there are only 4 locations, 5 maybe, that where the laterals are being relocated. So getting temporary easements so that we can excavate through their yards to install the lateral. Like I said, we'll probably stay 2 or 3 feet short of the home with our excavation, cap the pipe, and then at some point, what that really does is it relieves, in my opinion, Crafton from their obligation should that line collapse and back up into the laterals that are active now. Assuming that the contractor will be coordinating, or the property owner would be coordinating to make their connection when our line is run. So anyway, to me, it takes away the liability or the risk that you have associated with a collapsing pipe backing up into someone's home. So hopefully those residents act quickly and get their side of the project done so that they can be fully disconnected from that pipe. And the last element of that, once those homes are out, we do know that pipe serves as a relief when the system surcharges, it backs up into the manhole and discharge the manhole where the main flow is, and it discharges down this North Emily Johnston pipe that needs to be eliminated. So we can't just eliminate the pipe without understanding how much water is getting relieved during certain storm events, because if we don't, and that water stays in the pipe, then it's going to back up and surcharge somewhere that we probably aren't going to be able to predict. A lot of times those pipes are installed just for that reason, to relieve the sewer of too much flow. So we have a monitor in place. We're finding out how often that pipe takes water and what the volume is, duration, and we can correlate that with the rain events and see we can make future predictions of how much water that pipe would take, let's say in a 100-year or even a 500-year storm, and then make accommodations either on North Emily or Johnston to take care of that extra flow, whether it's to upsize the piping, identify a bottleneck. There is a bottleneck downstream, so that those issues are next, but at least we have the protection of not damaging homes. And the pipe itself, although it's collapsing, still carries some volume of water. So I don't think we're even at a point now where we're worried about the pipe collapsing completely and then not allowing that excess flow to relieve the system. So, but that's the next hurdle. First and most difficult was finding all these laterals and negotiating with each property owner to get easements to explain the project. They're not all happy about the project. Obviously, it's an inconvenience to them, although they recognize the protection they can provide from basement backup. So we finally, like I said, got over a hurdle that's been plaguing us there for a while. So we'll be able to move ahead with that. As far as the consent order goes, I'll just take a couple minutes. We'll have some more time to talk about, over time what this means. You haven't received your order yet, although word today was they're coming any day. Next week, the following week. We've been hearing that for months. So Three Rivers said that BEP reached out to them and said that they're just about ready for issuing the line orders. And what it's going to entail is that each point of connection, which is where Crafton connects to the Alcasance intersector along Chartiers Creek, you have, I think that's C19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25. There's one missing out of it, like they're not a 22 or not a 20. I don't know. So you have 5 points of connection. Each one of those are required to capture 85% of the flow that is going to them. 6. No, there are 6. Okay. In any event, so 85% capture means that 85% of the water that hits the ground, the roof, grass, in a certain area, all the area that drains to that point of connection. And it's a watershed and a sewer shed combination, but all the water that drains to that spot, you have to collect 85% of the volume, which means you can't overflow more than 15% of each storm. So in many cases, you're Coletta just handing me this exhibit A is out from Three Rivers. This is the attachment to your order, and exhibit A represents all of the points of connection that I mentioned, and as well as some others that you may be participating in, but are minor contributors. These are listing your actual percent capture based on the 2008 flow monitoring data. And essentially in all the major points of connection, you're not meeting any of them, as low as 47%, and as high as 82. And these are all from C19 to C25. These are the main interceptor collection points that you flow to. Now, you do share some of those points of connection with the city, with Ingram, with Greentree. So there is going to be some proportioning of your share of the cost and the work and the projects associated with complying with the order, obtaining 85%, or capping the project to 10%. So you would have to raise your percent capture by 10 percentage points. So 47 would have to go to 57. So that's based on 2008 data, but we know that you have done some significant projects. And so now we have to see what the effects are of these projects, which then leads to additional flow monitoring. So we'll be doing flow monitoring for 2 reasons. One, to update the 2008 data. So in all these locations, we're going to replicate a new meter that will give us current flow data. So these percentages we suspect will change. They should improve in a few of these points of connections. Although over time, since this is already 12, 13 years old, conditions may have gotten worse in some of these. So you may have gotten worse, or even in the areas that you did better on, you may not have done as well as you'd hope because the system continues to deteriorate and your percent capture drops as well. So as the system deteriorates and you take on more extraneous flow that really wasn't designed to go through that system, then you overflow more frequently, more volume, more duration. So in any event, the point is that the flow meters are going to tell the story. And flow meters are difficult, meaning, this data was done in 2008. So it's based on, let's say, the season when this was done. It could have been done in summer, it could have been done in winter. All seasons have different flow rates. In the spring it rains more than in the summer. And so and then sometimes there are wetter years, right? 2018, 2019. 19 was, I think, the record year of all time, the wettest season. I think we had 70 or 69 inches of rain when we usually have, 36 or so, 40 inches of rain. So obviously, if you did monitoring in that period, your numbers were going to look terrible. So we have to evaluate and normalize meters. So these meters could have been done in a wet year in 2008. It could have been a wetter year. So without getting too much into the details, there's a typical year, what they call a typical year, and they looked at 100 years of flow data and come up with 2003 was sort of the median typical year for the number of storm events, the types of storm events, and then those have responses to the system. So we take the 2008 data, and there's some complex processes to get it to be comparable to 2003. Because 2003 is the standard. So if it happens to be identical to 2003, then you just take that data and then you can make your assumptions and your decisions based on that. But we'll give you factors. Let's say 2008 was wetter than 2003 by 22%. And then all these numbers would change based on getting it back to zero or to the base, which is 2003. And then the new meter data that we'd be collecting, the same thing, it would have to be pulled back to 2003 so that it can be evaluated. Was it a dry year or was it a wet? If it's a dry year, your numbers are going to get better because less flow. So in any event, all of that is leading up to the end of this year and next year. So there's a project that's called the source reduction project. It's basically I&I removal from your system. And you've already started, you're already underway on that. And we said from the very beginning, all the work that you do would be going towards you meeting these percent capture standards. And so that's true.
And I&I is infiltration, right?
Yes. Yeah, source reduction is a weird term, but it's the source of the flow, illicit flow getting into the system. So it's easier to understand with infiltration and inflow reduction. So to wrap it up, it's just, that's a key for us next year. We only have until mid 2023 to tell the DEP or the health department, in your case, it's DEP, what the projects are. We have a year and a half to do all the monitoring, develop all the models. Each of these POCs needs a hydraulic model developed, built and developed, and then utilized so that we can predict what projects will do to increase our percent capture. There's no way to do that other than to model it. So if we say, oh, if we do a project here and we take out this volume of flow, then we can run the model and see what the impact is on the overflow. So that's what's prescribed in the order. And the good news is, if we predict we're going to get a 10% reduction, or I'm sorry, a 10% improvement on the flow, and it happens to be 9.5, there's not a compliance penalty. There's not you fail. It's as long as the engineering, the modeling, and flow monitoring is solid, and DEP is accepting these or approving these plans, and it doesn't necessarily work out like you plan, you're not in compliance. You still comply with the order. So, and the reason they do that, they know that this is very, very difficult work to take a system that changes every time it rains and every time something happens. Groundwater tables up and down that have an impact on how much water comes in or goes out of the system. So highly complex. DEP and the health department are recognizing that and allowing that. You don't have to actually make the percentages that you predict, as long as they're predicted, by general engineering standards.
Rich.
Yes.
Based on all the projects that we have going, what would be your prediction related to these figures?
Yeah, good question. That's really tough, because even working up on Crafton Boulevard, it's so far from the actual point of connection. So many things happen. It would be difficult. I'm going to say, and I'm not even sure which POC Crafton Boulevard goes to, but it is going to be an improvement. But there's always oddities. For example, when you seal a system, when you put new pipe, so old pipe lets water in, it leaks in. Just when the groundwater table rises above the pipe, the water leaks in and it adds volume of flow to the pipe. So as we put new plastic pipe in, this system's going to be sealed tight. So it won't allow for it, which is great. And we've also taken out the water that used to go in. Now we're pushing it to the stream after it's been managed. But what happens is sometimes flow leaks out of the pipes and the cracks as well. So that won't happen. So the water that used to leave the system that may have helped the overflow reduction and helped your percent capture is gone. So now you're adding flow inadvertently because you're replacing the pipe. It's just the consequence that just can't be avoided, and it is an oddity. Normally the water's coming in much further than water. but there are instances, we've seen instances where we've lined thousands of feet of pipe and the flow increased. So,
But good thing for Crafton, we're actually still retaining our original sanitary system, so that leaky pipe should still just do what it's doing.
that's right. But as you fix these, that's
Yeah.
just one of the instances. I'm just trying to show the complexity, and it's tough to predict. That's why the regulators are saying, look, if you do a good job in the engineering and the modeling, we're not going to hold you to the exact requirement.
Which is still sort of gross, thinking that, you got all these contaminants just going through the neighborhoods, right?
Yeah. On the surface, sometimes underground. Last item is the Public Works building. So where we stand on that is we got bids from CoStars, which we contacted 2 vendors on CoStars. And then we talked to them about, here's the specs, here's what we want you to provide. It's just to provide the building in boxes, in pallets, and put it somewhere. So we got bids from CoStars, and then we also publicly bid the project to check the bids from CoStars. And they came in close, but on the agenda tonight is a discussion point. We can talk about it now, or I can wait until
We can do it now.
So what happens with CoStars, especially on a project this size, is that it gets tricky because they put generic numbers in for buildings of certain square feet and doors, and there's a factors that change the actual bid based on let's say the price of steel or the delivery time, or it's 6 inches, our door 6 inches bigger than the door that they normally supply or that was in the price. Like there's an average price for a 7-foot door, we want a 7.5-foot door, and it might be double. So, and a lot of this is just hidden in massive a number of items that they pick from to build your building and then tell you the price. So I say that because there was a public bid that gave us a price of I want to say 360, 359.
Are you talking about the Miller stars?
No,
359.
350, 360. Okay. And then on the CoStar, they gave us a price that I think was 30,000. No, that was 372. Thanks. So, but we did notice that they didn't include windows, or no, sorry, insulation. So there was 30 or 40,000 that was reduced to compare the bids, the building's apple to apple. So the actual price from CoStars came down, which now that means, is that really the price? So we reached out to Miller. They're already hawing around. Well, we can't tell you what the real price is. We don't know yet. Price of steel is skyrocketing, and which is exactly what we talked about at the engineering meeting, that they have to give us a number because we can't compare an estimate and then you'll tell us what the number is in order to pick the lowest cost. So we're gonna tell Miller, who is the contractor from CoStars, that you're going to be voting in the next meeting on awarding a building contractor to supply the building. And they need to give us a guaranteed price, just like we have from the vendor that the public bid was. And it needs to match the specs that we gave them, which match the specs of the bidding contractor, right? So everything has to be even in order to make a recommendation to you on which vendor to pick. So that's what we'll be working on. We're going to put a deadline. If you don't give it to us by a certain time, we're going to void your bid because you're not being responsive, and we'll move ahead with Yule. They're an excellent supplier and also installer. So we think that if they get this work, they will give us a very good price to install it. And that's next. So we've Alberto is putting together a work authorization for the next phase, which is to really not do any site development, not a lot of work around the building, but to put the pad in, have the building constructed, and then to run the utilities to the building. And then the next phase would be to do the site work for a parking lot. The reason we're sort of separating them is there are some wetlands that need to be addressed. And if we include it in this work, we'll be a year out. So it just makes sense to phase these, and then we can address the wetlands. They probably have to be moved or replaced somewhere. So all of that can occur. So that work to get a bid out for a contractor to build the pad, construct the building, run the utilities, is forthcoming. So first is to get the building locked down, then is to bid the project to actually come and install the building.
Right. Yeah, we understand the importance of making a decision. I appreciate the fact that you guys are doing the due diligence to make sure that we get apples to apples comparison. But as we know, there's a bit of inflation that's unpredictable right now, and we're all seeing it, monitoring it closely. So we'll look forward to your report by the next meeting so we can make an informed decision. Mr. Chandler, do you have any comments? Nothing in particular. Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else under your report?
That's all I have.
All right. And if that's that, let's go to the solicitor report. Any executive session we can announce about from the last meeting.
Yeah, we did have an executive session following the last meeting to discuss real estate issues. Couple things on my plate here. I did review the draft Borough social media policy. Had a few minor comments that I'll share with the group. Nothing of nothing that's extremely material. I should say it was in very good shape and had all the flags that I usually look for were covered in here. So good job by all that worked on that. The street opening, that is, it's listed on later in the agenda as well, if I recall. This is street opening ordinance. I reviewed Gateway revised the existing street opening. It looks good to me. Couple minor things here and there just for consistency, but no material change there. But the date that we were looking at October 28th for adoption is too soon given the public notice requirements and the fact that the paper doesn't run as often as it used to. So I think we'll be looking more at November 9th for that.
Okay.
So I don't think that makes a difference for the borough. It's a couple weeks beyond the 28th.
It's not a nice.
Okay, so that'll be ready to go.
So may I ask you a question?
Sure.
This is really direct to our professionals here. With regards to the council's aim of ensuring that we're protecting our investments in the roads and the alleys that we're reconstructing, do you feel as if we have adequate protections to ensure that those investments are being protected?
Yeah, I think a lot of the changes are direct just at issues. I think that's the goal. We certainly met.
Yeah, it provides flexibility for council to make decisions in areas that are sort of gray. In fact, you can deny an excavation through your roadway. You have the ability to do that, at least through this ordinance, if it's not deemed an emergency or critical infrastructure. So, when they come in and they say, and then we fix the street and they say, yeah, we're not going to fix the water line. And then next year they say, we're going to replace that water. So they're going to submit a permit. You have the right to deny it based on whatever you decide that's within the ordinance, but it's made for that very thing where utilities don't, we reach out and we say, we're fixing this road. Any updates from utilities will coordinate. And if they say no, and they come in later, once again, you have the ability now to reject that.
And the proper adequate cost recovery for reconstruction.
Yeah, and in roads that you all do agree to fix them, you're going to be fixing the trench, or asphalting the trench, and then milling and paving, depending on where the trench is, from the center line to the curb. If the trench touches the center line, then it's curb to curb restoration. So they mill 1.5 inches. They mill the wearing surface off and replace it with the wearing surface. And they seal the joints at each end of the patch. So you don't just have a little, pothole in the future. So you have a nice transition through the patch and back off the patch. So that's the standard. And there's some rules. It depends. If you have a road that's 20 years old, it's falling apart, you really can't hold them to a full restoration patch, on a road that's falling apart. So there's some reasonable built in.
But if they decide to tear out the water line of South Grandview in 1 year from now, they're gonna have to take it.
Or you can say no. Yeah, that becomes a negotiation.
I like it. I think it's one of the better ordinances. You end up with one of the ordinance. It gives you the flexibility to do and to hold the utility feet to the fire.
I'll make a comment too, that these ordinances are good, and if they're enforced. It takes a lot out of the staff to run a good street opening permit process. So you need someone that really pays attention, because these guys will come in and they'll dig something up, but they won't get a permit. You won't even know. So everybody, the police, your public works crew, everybody's looking, what's that guy do? You have a permit for that? Or go dog? And there's a guy on First Street digging a hole. So catching them doing those things and then holding them to, a lot of times they'll come in, they'll make the repair and they'll leave. And then it just sort of gets forgotten and nobody really remembers, because people don't complain, or we don't drive on that street. So there's just a big square patch in the middle of the road that I've seen in many communities, they forget. They get busy and they do something else. But putting someone on that and making someone responsible for it is a lot of work. So anyway. That's my home.
Thank you. Be able to check that.
Noted.
I think. Lastly was Sunshine Act. There was some inquiry. Did somebody want to pose a question?
We just wanted to update, make sure that, we understand the interpretations and the direction. To make sure that, whether it be a commission, a committee, the council, that we're all.
Those rules apply to all of those. I think you can interpret this that you just need the topics to be on the agenda, but I still think it's in everybody's best interest to make the agendas as correct and as complete as possible in 24 hours. Certainly, if you're adding an item that wasn't on the agenda, that would trigger the new requirement that it has to be voted on by the council to be added. But like, for example, I know in the agenda that was posted, there was a change of a date, I think, for the meetings. Like, that's not a material change that we would have to vote on during the course of the meeting, because that agenda item was already. But I would much prefer us to continue being as fully complete as possible. I don't want to be the test case over some technical reading of the new statute. And then what was there something else about voting to advertise or something?
Yeah, just with regards to the various bids, or if it's, with regards to advertising meetings, et cetera. Let's say a committee has to, or a commission has to advertise. They can work with the manager and get those things, but they don't have to be voted on by the council.
The council wouldn't have to approve a meeting for a commission. I think it's a best practice to, at your meetings, like if you're voting to advertise an ordinance or to advertise an RFP, I think that's a best practice. But at a minimum, if you're talking about an item about, say, for example, the street opening ordinance or whatnot, right? Like at a minimum, you should be ensuring that there are no objections to the matter being advertised. So at least so it's on the public record and every member of council as president has a chance to voice an objection. And if there are, you should talk about it, and then I would move to a motion. But if there are no objections, you could get away with, in my opinion, not making a motion to advertise. My personal preference was always to advertise, or to vote to advertise, authorize to advertise this meeting, this RFP, this ordinance. I like it from my perspective, because no one's going to say, oh, well, I did it because the manager told me, but council wasn't on board. And why are we voting on this? Or why did we spend $500? And then we're like in trouble.
Yeah.
We don't want to be in trouble. We don't want to do what you all want us to. That's just mine. Taking on that, sure. Absolutely. And that's the end of my report unless somebody has a question. Or something they'd like me to do. Thank you.
Manager's report, please.
There was a written report in the OneDrive. Most of my report is going to be covered in the next page and a half here. So if there's any specific questions, I'm glad to answer them now when we get to the reports and the business items here.
Yeah, we can move forward. All right, Ms. Barry, you want to start with finance administration?
Sure. So the Finance and Administration Committee has been, along with our consultants, basic business concepts, that we're working on revamping the budget so that we have special areas for our construction budget, our capital expenditure, and how we're going to be noting those and budgeting for those. We had actually, Doug and I met today, and then we'll have one more meeting tomorrow where we're trying to pull all this new methodology and make sure that we transfer everything. The intent is to, we'll see a little bit further down, and we've all consulted with each other, but to have our first budget meeting in conjunction with our next council meeting, we're proposing to move the time up a little bit so we can do that. We will, for at least the first two budget meetings, will be led by the outside consultants of basic business. And what we're working on is to figure out ways to make the information and what is being done more accessible, probably with some charts and graphs and that sort of thing. So that's the main piece of business. The other thing is, over the last couple of months, we have been talking with the manager, with administration, and are recommending an operational and organizational assessment. So what we'd like to be able to do is to have an outside professional come in and evaluate the organization and how administration works and how they're actually doing things, so that we can end up with a report with recommendations on how to be more efficient and how maybe to balance loads and to also accommodate for some of the things that we've been hearing about that we have needs that maybe right now are not being met. So on the agenda, we're actually, Doug has been working on an RFP for that service. So we're going to be asking council to authorize us to advertise that. So those are the main two things that I'm pretty much going to take it from here.
So next up is that motion to authorize myself to advertise and solicit the RFP, the operational organizational assessment of the borough's operations.
So motion moved to authorize the interim manager to advertise and solicit the request for proposal for an operational organizational assessment of the borough's operations. First and second.
So moved.
So moved. Second. Okay. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question and or comment, depending on how you parse it out. I understand that the motion on the floor is simply to request a proposal. So my question is, what is theoretically the end game for an operational and organizational assessment of those operations? What does it actually look like in practice?
Mr. Oliver, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So basically what it is, it's looking at all of our overall operations from not only staffing perspective, but how we do levels of authorities, do we have policies, handbooks in place, everything. And they do an assessment to say, here's where you are. And then post that is, you want to make any changes to it. Do we want to look at our current staffing levels as they are? Do we make changes to them in the future? This goes across the whole borough.
Okay, so what's a real world hypothetical of that being played out? I understand handbooks and the like are important for an organization. You know, if we have a larger organization, I could see that being something that might be very, might need more than an organization of four, maybe 4.5.
So as we look at our staffing levels, everything across the board related to the staffing, but also the way that we operate, that has not been reviewed in a very long time. And we've seen struggles in terms of how the operations are being conducted, so that we need this assessment to be able to make those decisions.
Right. So my question, I guess, is from a governmental perspective, is how does that influence the implementation of particular policy? Because what we're here to do is to dictate policies and see them implemented. Are we having a problem with that currently?
Mr. Sample, could you speak to that, to the, you're leading the organization today. Could you add some color, please?
I think that there's a lot of, yeah, so I think there's a lot of stuff that we want to be doing, and that the council has ideas on, that I have ideas on. It's taking all that, putting it into a report to produce, okay, let's just say, I mean, social media has come up earlier. What is how do we effectively manage a social media policy? An in-house person, contract that out. Is there a true need? Does council feel that that's a major priority? So it's a prioritization of everything that what we are doing currently and where we want to go, and how to put forth a game plan to meet what we want to be doing in the future.
So for those of us at the dais, not myself included here, who have prior governmental experience in other municipalities, what do or how does it look like for organizations that are analogous to ours? Do they do these types of reports? Because again, I mean, there's a public sector, private sector balance here. We're public sector.
Yes, these reports are common. Lots of times they'll look at public works, police, fire. We're looking at the boards and administration.
So what have you seen that is a deliverable from one of these reports in your experience that's actually something you've seen across the goal line? So what's an example of a policy somewhere in the municipality that's been implemented more effectively?
I have only done one of these reports for, was actually here for the consolidation of the fire department back in 2010. That's all I can speak of.
Mr. Quinn?
I authorized one before my resignation, the study of the police department and issues that were occurring down. It's been in the news recently, but I don't know the results of the report. I don't know what steps have been taken, but the report that we asked for was to analyze the department and make recommendations on how it could function better, because it was not functioning well. And this seems to be, looking at the borough administration, et cetera, on all these fronts. So it's not unusual. I would be interested to see
One of the, we do a lot, but it's all done through volunteer organizations. And I don't think that's a sustainable practice moving forward. You can't rely, you can't control effectively manage volunteers. And we want to have a consistent product that we put out, whether it's newsletter, website, social media, street opening permit. Thank you.
social media street.
We need to dedicate some resources. I think this study is probably one of the best ways to put some meat behind the request.
Okay, that's an example that's more in line. I think deliverable, being that we have a lot of real world experience with quasi-volunteer, quasi-public organizations here, where you have folks dipping their toes on the council, on the planning commission, back to the council, back to the et cetera, over a 20-year span. So yeah, that answers my question as far as that's concerned. So
Thank you, Mr. Gross. right, any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Do we have the motion?
Yeah, the motion is-
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And I was a no.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right.
The next are three resolutions, and this is for the Community Development Block Grant Program that's run through the COG. We have two projects that we're applying for. The first is replacing sidewalk on Duncan Avenue. This is a newly paved street this year, and it's the section from Steuben to Glen. We are requesting $28,000, $28,518 for a total project that is estimated at $33,550. The second project is the demolition of 64 South Grandview and 11 Fountain. We had previously applied for these under the Act 152 funding. They were not funded through that program. COG said, let's put them in on this program. The CDBG year 48. We were requesting $130,900 in grant funds for a total project that is estimated $169,000. So we have two resolutions, concurring resolutions requesting the grants, and then the resolution 2021-18 is designating 64 South Grandview and 11 Fountain Street as blighted.
Like me to make motions. All right, first motion. To adopt resolution number 2021-016, formally requesting grant funds from year 48 CDBG funding for Duncan Avenue sidewalk replacement project.
So moved. And second.
Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Hearing none that oppose, motion passes.
6-0.
Next motion. To adopt resolution number 2021-017, formally requesting grant funds from year 48 CDBG funding for demolition of South Grandview Avenue and 11 Fountain Street.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. It's tangential to the motion. It's about the property. It's about properties in general. I'm wondering what happens to the titles for these demolished when they become vacant lots.
The grants or the grants are then, the properties are liened in the amounts of the grants, and the title remains the property. So if the vacant lot is transferred to somebody else, then you have to clear the liens, which would include the
You know, is there any other, well, I'm just to be clear, I'm in favor of the motion, but since this is, again, kind of a question that is in this bailiwick here, is there any way that we have a box to acquire these titles once these buildings are demolished?
We could ask for the borough itself to push the properties to sheriff's sale, but you can't just obtain the title by municipal fee.
I'm not saying that.
But you
I'm
have to
saying
go
there's
through
probably
this.
a mechanism to do so in the court system.
You could,
Buy it.
you could just go buy them. You could go to the property owners and say, we'd like to purchase.
No, I just find it, you know, in light of, you know, I think that there is different avenues for folks to acquire properties. They want to have a side yard or to go to the garage, or those are good options on the table and could be applicable to these types of demolitions. But I also think that, you know, it might be something for the next council to consider a more holistic approach to acquiring some of these properties, spaces, so that we can either redevelop them ourselves or put green spaces on them or fill out our neighborhoods so we don't have just open vacant properties sitting around. And you know, that's something that I noticed that we've done a lot of demolitions, which I think is good, but we haven't really followed that up with the other half of the coin, which is what happens then. We tend to just take our hands off the wheel there, and I think there might be some space for council to plan to address this issue, for further demolition. So that's why I asked. Thank you.
So that begs the question, so we're demolishing other people or homeowners' property, they still, so we're actually paying to get their property demolished. They keep that property, which they can then sell or.
But they have to clear the lane.
In order to sell it, they would have to clear,
But they still,
they still got.
Let me ask you this. You have a situation where one owner, allows the property to be demoed, and then the neighbor gets it through side yard, and basically there's basically a little like deal, and we, the public, pick up the price. And the side yard program allows for basically that property to be acquired free and clear, is that right?
The side yard program does usually, no, you have to pay some of it. I don't know all the details.
So,
But
so
there-
this is all very, excuse me, but this is all very interesting. So we have a motion on the table, and should all the discussion be pursuant to this motion? I mean, it's a very valid thing, and we should discuss it, but let's deal with the motion and then put this on our discussion.
There's a motion to assist.
There's a first and second.
We're at it.
Mr. Cross.
Yeah, we're just, right, aren't we discussing?
Yeah, but the motion on the table is about seeking the grant funding, not a general discussion about what to do with blighted properties.
All right, well, we're just having a discussion, so with that, I ask my questions, everybody else asks questions, so,
You don't have to participate in the side yard program, you do not have
okay. All right. So with that, I don't hear any other questions about the motion on the table. All in favor? Aye. All that opposed? I'm not opposed, motion passes. Motion to adopt resolution number 2021-018, designating 64 South Grandview Avenue and 11 Fountain Street as blighted.
So moved.
So here's a second.
Second. For the record, the questions could apply to this motion, maybe in more general context. It's not a resolution regarding funding on this motion, so my questions are still, I still want them stand in the record here. What do we do with these titles? What do we do with a more holistic blighted property policy for the borough? That's my caveat to the motion.
it. If I was in a deposition, I would say ask them. Goodbye. I answered the question.
That's fine.
Anybody else? All right, hearing no other questions, all in favor? All that opposed? None opposed, motion passes. All right,
The next item is the GEDTF grant. This is the gaming money.
They changed.
Yeah. But, so this one had just opened up. It's a very narrow window. So one of, through the engineering meeting, we were coming up with ideas. Our public stairs are in a state of disrepair. So we are going to move forward on submitting for that project. Public Works is, we're getting the information, putting the grant together. Maximum for this grant is 500,000. There'll be a nominal match for us, which would be about 10%. So that's we'll be submitting for this grant for the replacement of the public stairs.
okay. Gonna make a motion. Motion to adopt resolution number 2021-019 to authorize the interim borough manager to submit grant to GETF for the replacement of public stairs throughout the borough.
So moved.
Second. Questions, comments?
I have a question. One will be named down. How many stairs do we have?
The computer's over there.
Just ballpark it up.
8 set of steps.
Thank you.
And Doug, what are the stairs? What do you think?
Be considered
A liability.
a liability. Is that what you want?
Well, that,
Which steps are public?
yeah,
They're usually in rights of way. Some sort of, they
They'll-
were laid out as streets or rights of way.
Trails, sidewalk.
Yeah,
oh, look at.
the city's on Main Street.
Engineer Minsterman, could you just speak to any of the liability and how we're currently grandfathered, but if we're to do any work, then we're gonna have to be bring up to code. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, it's like anything, once you touch it, you know, you gotta get it up to standard, so. But essentially, a lot of these, the reason why you're thinking about touching it, grant app is, these are normally concrete steps, that are in poor condition, rebar is exposed, the concrete is falling. But the real issue when we talk about this engineering meeting is, do you need them all?
Right.
That's one option, is go through an assessment, see if anybody using them. They are using some of them, so the grant would be focused initially just to tear them out and regrade or address the area isn't cheap either, so you'd need the grant for that. If that was even eligible, so that's all part of the grant. How many stairs? How long are they? How many steps? What about the railings? What, should they be womanized lumber instead of concrete? I mean, there's so many different options that this will take a life on its own, as far as, you know, even sort of theming what these would look like.
ADA accessibility.
Right, right, and so there's many different issues. So, anyway, it would be great if you get the grant to spend 10% on actually replacing that infrastructure. Like I was saying, to me, this is similar to a sidewalk, and it's similar to a trail. It's just vertical. So you need them in hilly terrain. So anyway, that's really it. But all of the details will be put together once the grant is acquired. So we'll work with Doug on costing, so that when he prepares the grant, we at least know what the cost is going to be.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All that opposed? None that opposed?
Last item is budget meetings, and then we also have to reschedule 2 council meetings because they fall on holidays. So we want to read the motion?
Yep. Motion move to authorize the interim manager to advertise the following council meetings. The council meeting on October 28th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. to be immediately followed by the budget workshop. The second meeting is council meeting for November 9th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. to be immediately followed by the budget workshop. Number 3, budget workshop meeting on November 16th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. And number 4, council meeting for November 23rd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. to be immediately followed by budget workshops. And with the exception to October 28th, all those other dates are on Tuesday. Right?
Second.
Questions, comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? None that opposed? All right, and administration has this under control, you're gonna.
Yep.
All right. All right, Mr. Chandler.
Okay. It's leaf season. We're a little late. I'm a little late in asking for this, but hiring 2 part-time public works employees to help out with the leaf season. So there is a motion to advertise, for myself to advertise and hire 2 part-time seasonal.
All right, thank you. The motion to authorize the interim manager to advertise and hire 2 part-time public works and seasonal employees.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I'm aware of the summer season, but this leaf season is
Basically October 15th, till December 1st, depending on the weather, just into the snow.
Okay, so part-time for that 2 months.
For that 2 months.
Okay.
What was that?
Angles are all. Yeah. All right, all there,
Now we need a vote.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion passes.
I'll take the next one
Yep.
too. So when we bid the contract with Waste Management, it was a 5-year contract with 5 option years. So this would be option year 3. The contract calls for a cost increase of 4.5%. And it would go increase from $18.72 per unit per month to $19.56 per unit per month. There are 2 more option years left on the contract. This is something that we can discuss as we move forward into next year if we want to continue. I know the option year 4 is another 4.5% increase, so we probably want next council to take a look at this and see where we want to go and check where the prices are at. There's just a lot of uncertainty, so I recommend that we lock this price in now and see, what transpires in the early part of next year before we would make any moves to void the contract. So this will have a vote at our October 20th.
All right, any discussion items on this from council? I think it's good advice and we'll put it on the agenda. We know what's going on with labor and fuel costs and every other cost there, so we'll see how it goes next year.
We talked street sweeping, or I'm sorry, street opening ordinance. We talked street sweeping parking ordinance. This is something that I want to start to work on to get a schedule for the street sweeper. And in particular, this came up in our commercial district. Cars are not moving. We need to get those streets clean. So this would be a way to take a look at it. So I just want to put that out there, that we begin to work on this. There's no votes coming or anything like that. We're just letting you know that that's something we want to tackle.
Yeah, and Engineer Manserman, could you speak to the importance of keeping our separate system, our new infrastructure clean, and why we have to focus on this?
Yeah, that's one of the items in your operation and maintenance plan for your 9 minimum control permit to ensure that your system is kept clean of debris. Leaves, that's a big part of your leaf program, and also silt and sediment be kept out of the systems. You also have a secondary protection in some of the areas with what's called a storm scepter, where that grit and debris is captured, but then it requires cleaning, right? They have to back out those materials. So that also minimizes the amount of cleaning frequency that you have to do, that your public works folks have to do to go out and clean. So just the programs together, they work well. They're part of your obligation to operate and maintain your combined system.
Any comments from the council?
So just out of curiosity, since I'm understanding exactly what this is, it's going to be something along the lines of you can't park on X street from 8 to 10 a.m.
On every other Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not every street is designated streets that we study, I imagine, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to go into this, but we want to at least get it on the radar. Bingo.
All right, commercial vehicle parking ordinance. You want to leave with that, or I'll talk about it? I've been receiving some complaints from neighbors about the requirement to have a permit to have truck racks. And the comment as well, if you can have a kayak rack or a ski rack or any other thing, why is the normal everyday resident who has a pickup truck have to have a permit for a rack of that type. Whereas, we're not contesting the necessity of having permits for commercial vehicle, permits, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So can you, for those of us who do not own trucks, never owned a truck rack, what is this that you speak of?
Truck rack is a.
I mean, why would we have an ordinance for someone to have a rack on the truck?
I don't know,
Okay.
ask the mayor.
I'm just, I mean, that seems to me like the quintessential place we should be going.
We have to draw a line on commercial vehicles in the borough. If you don't draw a line, the amount of vehicles that will end up on the streets in a limited parking community to begin with would be ridiculous. Now, this has been addressed for years. And it came down to the commercial vehicle ordinance where when initially it started, nobody was allowed to have a pickup truck parked on the street, period. Okay, that was the rule, the initial rule. Then they realized, council realized that people owning pickup trucks was not a business, but like my pickup truck, I use it personally. I don't use it for anything else. Okay, so they drew the ordinance, the commercial vehicle parking ordinance, to draw the line, say, I can own a pickup truck, it's just mine. But you can own the same pickup truck. But if you've got Brad Krause roofing and racks on it, that's ridiculous. You cannot have that parked on the street. Okay, without a permit, that it has to comply with the guidelines established by the ordinance. Okay? Dual wheel vehicles, no dual wheel vehicles, period. If my pickup truck had dual wheels on it, I could not park on the street. It's by ordinance, and that's to prevent vehicles from, parking. If you go around, like right now, on Hawthorne Avenue, right now, probably right at this minute, there's a huge box truck parked on Hawthorne on the hill between Manor and Woodlawn. Now, that particular vehicle is being used by the sewer project people that are working at. But let's say that guy lives there. You want to park in that truck? That's why the ordinance was established. Now, somebody complaining about a kayak rack, that's ridiculous. Okay, we're talking commercial vehicles, not privately owned. We're talking people that are making money from the vehicle that they're parking in the street. Okay. Which would require the permit. I just changing this ordinance at this point would be ridiculous.
So let me ask you this. With regards to commercial vehicles, is there not a commercial vehicle designation in the Commonwealth? What is,
Sure.
okay,
Sure, if it's in PUC, whatever, okay.
No,
my
I'm not-
triax, so you'll say it'd be okay, I'll bring my triaxle home and park
but this is, we're talking about truck rack.
it. No, we're talking about commercial vehicles. Where do you draw?
No, what I'm
you
saying,
have to draw a
hold on,
line.
let's clarification here. Commercial, we're not saying the commercial vehicle parking parts goes away. What we're saying is we'd like to amend it. So you can be, if you have a personal vehicle that's non-commercial, that you can have a truck rack or whatever rack you want to have on it.
As long as you're not using it for a business.
Right, and so
We're
my
not
question
making
is,
any money.
right, if you are, right. So if you are running a business, and this is where we come into, like, Phil's, Fix It LLC, right? And I'm running a business out of my house. There's another issue there, which is Phil's LLC should be a registered business and paying business privilege tax and doing all those other things. So probably another.
Totally separate issue. We won't go deal with.
So then are we saying that the current ordinance that has to do with commercial vehicle parking requires a personal pickup truck to have a permit?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Right. Right.
Right.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
It's only a $5 permit, but why, I have a personal pickup truck, I have a rack. But my friend that has a SUV with a ski rack doesn't have to. And and we bought them for the same purpose.
Okay, so the personal pickup truck with the rack is not being used for business.
No.
It's just somebody wants a rack on their truck.
Right, like let's say I haven't put one on my truck because I don't want to be harassed about a permit, and I didn't realize how cheap it was, because when you look at ordinance, like, I don't have a commercial vehicle. And another thing is, for all of our, I come from a blue collar background, my dad was a union carpenter for 50 years. Why is the guy that's, working in the trenches, that has a pickup truck, that has a rack, why does he get picked on here? But the yuppie with the SUV and the ski rack and the kayak rack doesn't. Like, you tell me why. And so I don't think it's fair. It's not equitable.
Well, we can put them all on the street, Bill. Put them all on the street.
Well,
Load 'em up.
I think
Load 'em up.
the question I have is just to clarify to the mayor's point, because the mayor makes a valid point, and I would submit that that part of the ordinance should absolutely be very clear, be set in stone the way we've written it, because we are a limited parking community, and God knows this council has heard numerous times about parking problems in various places. So I agree with Mr. Bloom that we don't want to have someone pulling a big rig down Emily Street, parking it
But
on.
if you have a
But to your point, Philip, I mean, I think we should at least open the, we should at least consider amending it to make sure that the verbiage is correct.
So my thing is, from an administrative standpoint, all right, we're talking non-commercial vehicles. There are a lot of people that own pickup trucks. It's like, so why are we going to put administrative burden on our police department or our administrative office for $5 for our regular residents? Like, I just don't understand like what we get out of that.
If I was doing my Steve impression, I would say ask.
I think council knows how I feel about the item. I just think it's de minimis in value, and it's more of a nuisance to the good citizen, and if you're really trying to target commercial vehicles, and the language needs to be very specific to commercial vehicle, is to say that any truck that has a truck rack is a commercial vehicle doesn't seems punitive, and a draw of resources on the department, police, non-commercial vehicles. However, maybe this is also a time to address, like, are we having issues with contract folks that are working for Amazon, and is that an issue as well? Whether it be Amazon or whatever delivery service, because we see a lot of box trucks and Sprinter vans throughout, and they're parking on our streets, and
It should be covered too. It says it right in the ordinance.
right.
Any truck, sport, utility vehicle, or van used for the primary use of business shall get a permit.
So the thing is there any way, would those vehicles be required to be plated as commercial in the Commonwealth? So it would be a determination of the department to
The permit.
indicate that, so then they would have to contest that it's not being used for commercial. All right.
So, well, this is the point that we're going to vote on to this.
No, it says to have a discussion.
So there's no amendment.
No, it's just a discussion. It's a special meeting. This has come up with some of my neighbors, and I'm here as their elected representative to bring it up.
Well, I mean, again, I would be open to taking a look at it and having a conversation about it at a later council meeting. Have something to.
Or the solicitor could come back after review and make recommendations at a meeting.
What am I recommending? It sounds like there's not a consensus. Is there a consensus as to what to do? You all can direct me on the policy and help and support this. I mean, I'm just reading through it, and it's fairly broad as to what types of vehicles are prohibited without a permit. There's trucks, there's construction vehicles, school buses, trailers, motorhomes, boats, boat trailers, or any truck, sport utility vehicle, or van used primarily as a business or construction. That's a lot. Maybe everybody should read the commercial parking ordinance. You guys have another discussion.
I mean, is this
So in other
actually,
words, it's worth a look.
I think, yeah, I think we should look at it, but look at it. I don't know if anybody looked at it.
No, that's why we're bringing it up tonight.
Can we give it to the Community Services Structure Committee to review and then present the.
Bring it back in there.
I'm just saying. No, I can't even make a motion. All right. All right, so we already took care of item 6. Mr. Oliverio, I don't see any bullets, but do you have anything to report?
Yes, so we had our meeting, the Communication Recreation Community Events on September 21st. Part of that was the AV, of course, for this room that we're in right now. Council approved Hollywood to move forward, which they have. And I don't know, has it been scheduled yet? Because they're obtaining parts and other things. They said it would take 8 to 10 weeks. There's supply issues, but that's the goal. And one of our non-resident committee members, Justin Marks, did lead this effort. Did a great job, so I want to acknowledge that. On the social media policy that everybody looked at, it will be going to council for review. Also, our non-resident member, Justin Marks, worked on that policy and did a very good job. So now that the solicitor has approved it, we'll be sending it out with more communication for a future meeting.
I'll send my tweets in.
Okay. The last thing was the newsletter. We have the Crafton Courier going out. I believe it should be in houses by next week. And there was a lot of effort for this. The committee was working on it. I'd like to acknowledge Fleta Perry for her work in leading that. It is very well done. And also there are several pages that I think almost everybody had contributed in some way to the newsletter. So it has a lot of information, and I encourage the residents to read it, go through it. It will also be on the website too. So we will be getting it out on the website. Also, the committee was working on providing ideas and suggestions for that in the future. And that's it.
Thank you. Emergency preparedness, Mr. Amendola.
There's nothing to report. Everything's status quo.
Thank you, Mr. Amendola. All right, community announcements. The Crafton mini golf will be open on Fridays and Saturdays each week from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. throughout the summer. Cost of play is $2 per person. All CDC, state, and local COVID guidelines will be followed. All right. Crafton Borough Recreation Board is proud to announce the second annual Haunted Crafton Driving Tour. The tour will be a self-guided audio driving tour through the spookiest places in Crafton. Some of what you hear will be actual hauntings, and others only come out into the yard around Halloween. Monetary and food donations will be given to the Crafton Ingram Food Bank. Donations of kid-sized hats and gloves will be given to the Crafton Elementary School. The tour begins on October 23rd, 2021, and will go through November 1st, 2021. Homes will be lit nightly from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Though the tour is available the entire week leading up to Halloween, it will be extra spooky for one night only. Please visit the borough's website at www.craftonborough.com/parks-recreation for more information. All right.
Mr. President, on item A for the mini golf, it says throughout the summer. It's actually through October.
Yeah.
So it will be over in 19 weeks.
Thank you. Sorry, y'all, I was reading the script. Public comment for non-agenda items at this time. We have some folks that are online, and we have one member of the audience here in person. Audience member, do you have any comments for this evening? No. All right. Online attendees. Aaron Kemp. that it? Is that it? Yeah. You're just gonna mute that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute this one once.
Good.
I'm good.
All right, you can proceed to talk, Aaron.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Oh, great.
Testing,
Can you?
testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, council members.
I'm sorry. Do you want on both or?
Pause, Aaron. Just, did you mute that?
I think this one's muted. Wait. Yeah.
We're good?
I lost audio from you guys now. Sorry for the trouble. I'm not sure if you all can hear me or not. But my name is Aaron Kendall. I live on, my wife and I own 25 South Emily Street. And I just want to say that I'm an avid runner and really love and take use of all of the city steps, or the borough steps, I should say. I know that's anecdotal, but I just wanted to share.